Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, hello everybody. I have shifted back over to one of my OG filming places. Well, not the very OG, but I don't usually film in front of this anymore because I've filmed in front of my cute little shelf for a while over there. But I don't want to sit on the couch today. I wanted to sit in front of my books, okay? Sometimes you just want to sit in front of your pretty books. So I'm going to hope that the sun cooperates. And sitting here where I am, I have a bit more leeway with the lighting that always irritates me. So we'll see. But it's been a big week, you guys, okay? There's been some book drama. There's been some people outside of romance hating on romance, which happens all the time. There's been the historical romance readathon is going on, but don't worry if you don't care for historical romance. I have other books to talk about, because I never can just read one type of thing. But yeah, it is over midway through the month already. Like, holy crap, there's only 2 weeks left of January. Like, what is going on? But yeah, things have been going great. So we have I believe 8 books to talk about. I think we'll get through. Yeah, I think I got 8 books to talk about, which is cool. And yeah, we're gonna get through those. And then I have to film my Outlander wrap up for a recap, and my mind is really on that because if you watch Outlander, there was like a wild finale last night. Like, oh my goodness. So my brain is like a spinning about that. So let's get into this anyway. Right before we do, I do have a new patron to welcome. There is Alyssa M. Welcome, Alyssa. Thank you so much for choosing to support me. I cannot wait to be sending you some things. She is on the Fun Favorites book box, which the next book box goes out the end of February, beginning of March, which will be awesome. And just something for people who have been interested in the Together Till the End tier, which that is the one where you get an annotated book every month. One of my members, she is going to have to step down. She's trying to make better budget choices for 2025, and I can't say I blame her, though I definitely will miss her. So I don't know exactly what date she'll be stepping down from it. So, if you head on over to my Patreon and you're following it, I try to give my patrons the first dibs on choosing that before I let everyone else know about it. But it's going to be great. So thank you so much, Alyssa. Thank you to everyone who supports me and helps this to happen. You're fantastic. Let's go ahead and dive in because, boy, we have some books to talk about. I guess it is 7. So we have 3 arcs to talk about first. So let's do that. First up, there's Stolen Chances by Cleo Evans. This is book 2 in a series. This is an MMF. So this is a relationship between Sammy, Colt, and Sarah. And it does also have a bisexual awakening. But there is a single mom, Sarah. She has twins. And if you read the first book in this series, which I do recommend because it does really spill over into this one. This is a small town suspense going on. Though I did categorize this as erotic romance because the intimate relationship is the central part of this as well as some really fun, spicy things happen, which we'll get to. But I would suggest you start with book 1, which I think is Broken Beginnings. I'm not sure, but it's the first one in the series when you look it up. And this book is a direct, a lot is a reaction to what happens in there, which ends up leaving Sarah as a single mom of 2. She's in a bit of a financial trouble. Her twin boys, I don't think they're quite teenage. Are they 10, 11? I don't know how old they are, but they're old enough to know that stuff has went bad with their dad. I don't want to tell you what happened with their dad because it spoils what happens in book 1. But we start off this book actually with a flashback of Colt, one of our heroes, actually trying to stop Sarah from marrying her husband. And he literally shows up at the church and tries to stop her, but he won't give her a good enough reason to stop the marriage or this or whatever, or he's waited too long and Sarah's like, I gotta be with him. I'm not gonna leave him for you. And now we see what that has led to. And so this is kind of a second chance romance on the Colt and Sarah side, but they haven't ever actually really been together either. It was just always like a pining thing. And then Sammy, he is actually a influencer in some activities. He makes these cooking videos, which are like sexy cooking videos, right? So he films himself mostly from the head down with like bare chested with an apron, and he films like cooking videos and stuff. So he does have a bit of like online fame going on for him. But he is the one who has the bisexual awakening, actually. So Colt, it's already known that he's bisexual, and in fact, the relationship between Sammy and Colt is a brother's best friend. So yeah, Sammy's older brother is best friends with Colt, and Colt is also like found family to them, because when he came out as being bisexual, he was kicked out of his home, and he actually lived with Sammy's family off and on for a while there. He was an older like teenager, so it wasn't for too long, but that's also been, you know, Colt really was his like bisexual awakening, because it was the first man that he was ever really attracted to, but he never did anything with that. But Sammy is actually one of like the most adventurous of the three. He is into some BDSM, so he's kind of the one who like pulls us all into that in this story. But anyway, so then Sammy and Sarah, Sammy is interested in Sarah, and he is pursuing her in the beginning of this. And there's some awkwardness to start with, because Colt is also now looking out for Sarah and wants his chance with Sarah. But he's like trying to wait a little bit because of everything that went down with her husband. And Sammy's like, she hasn't been close with her husband in a long time. I'm not waiting anymore. And so he's going for her. And he actually tells Sarah, he's like, if you're dating other people and me at the same time, like, it's okay. I'm not overly territorial about that, and you know, until we're like really serious or whatever. And what he really means is he's okay with her also dating Colt, because he knows that Colt's also interested. And so when Colt tries to confront Sammy about it, he's like, why can't we both date her? In fact, why can't we all date each other? And so Sammy's actually the one who starts to initiate this, because he wants both of them, and he knows they want both, you know, they all want that, but he's the one who kind of is like, guys, let's just do it. Like, come on. So I really love that about Sammy. But the suspense part of this is that because of some stuff that went down, Sarah has like a stalker happening. People in town, some people also hate her because they blame her for something her husband's family has done. So she has a bit of stalking happening, and so Sammy and Colt end up kind of taking turns protecting her. So there's a bit of that like protective stuff going on too. So all of that to get out of the way, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. I did give it 4 stars because the suspense part of it was the weakest part for me. And I think part of that is my own fault, because as I said, you should really read the first one, and I did. But in the first one, I didn't pay as much attention to the suspense stuff in that one either, right? So that meant in this one, I was then a little lost about the suspense part because I didn't care about that. So that is my own fault, but it also did, like, when some of the suspense stuff is happening, I'm like, I don't care. I was very interested, though, in this poly relationship and how it was working out, and their, like, communication with it. And also, there are very distinct dates that all 3 different relationships have. You know, that's something I love. Like, both the men have a date together. Each of the MF couples have a date together. They have dates with all of them. So I love that stuff. And I think that Cleo Evans does a really great job with that, of making me believe everybody. So this one, like I said, I put it as erotic romance. I gave this a 4.5 on the spice scale just because of some very fun and creative things. A few other tropes though, right? I said this is friends to lovers, it's a menage, it is single parent, small town, brother's best friend, LGBTQ+, and piercings. So Sammy has a, I think he has a Prince Albert. I think he has a Prince Albert piercing going on for him. And then for the spicy stuff, which this is something that I'm tracking better this year in my thing, or trying to anyway. So this one had anal, breeding kink, DP, restraints, spanking and impact play, and squirting too. So lots, that one I'm sure will show up on some kink videos coming up because it had the goods there. All right, then, and Stolen Chances comes out, I believe, on the 28th. I should have told you guys that. That one comes out near the end of the month, I think. Then there's Just Like That, which that one comes out on the 20th, I think, or the 21st. I don't know. All of these are really close together. I apologize, but Just Like That comes out this week. Whenever you're watching, it comes out soon. This is book 4 in the King family, and I think there will be one more, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I think there will either be one more, or the sibling that's left might start a new series like she's done with the last ones. I'm not 100%. But either way, this one was finally JP's romance, who I always thought JP was the oldest brother, which I know that he's not, but they do all look to him like he's the oldest, and that is even like admitted to in this one. It's even admitted to that he is seen as like the oldest brother. So he's the one that's a billionaire. He's been running the King family industries and all that. And the father went to jail at the end of the last book because he was accused of murdering their mother. I'll just put that out there. I won't tell the circumstances or all of those things. But for both the Sullivan series and the King series, there's been some shadiness around JP's dad. And we've known that there was shadiness around that, even if not exactly what it was. And in the beginning of this book, well, actually the end of the last book, because, you know, we gotta start the next book in the epilogue, JP discovers that he has a son. And this woman named Hazel has brought her nephew, Teddy, to out-of-towner because her sister has recently died and left guardianship to both Hazel and the son's father, who she says is JP. Now, JP doesn't remember her sister, which of course makes Hazel very defensive in the beginning, which does like irritate me at the start, because I'm like, if this was a one-night stand, I think it's supposed to be like 8 or 10 years ago when he was going to college, I think, in a different city, like, how is it his fault? Now, there's a reason why she thinks he knows and was ignoring it, right? And we'll get into that later. So the sister is under false pretenses of knowing that. So there's that. But yeah, this one was wrapping up a lot of little plot bunnies that have been going around in this, or like loose threads, that have been going around. But I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one has a 3 on the spice scale. This one has it's age gap, forced proximity, grumpy sunshine, small town, secret child, billionaire. And I did listen to the audio of this. I forgot to say that. This was narrated by Stephen Dexter and Samantha Brentmore. Wonderful. And yeah, this was just, it was good. I don't know what else to say, because a lot of the things I love about this one is because I've read the rest. So again, as I said with the last one, this book will serve you best if you've read them all. This being the 4th book in a sibling series, I don't think you get the full weight of what's going on with this dad and with their loss of their mother if you start with this one. I also think you don't get the full weight of the revelations we have about JP if you haven't started with the first one, right? That's just how it goes. But I have really liked the King family. I've liked them even more than the Sullivans. And the Sullivans were the first books I read by Lena Hendricks. I read One Look. I think it was almost 2 years ago now that I read that one, and I loved it. But this series overall has been much stronger to me. I like her heroes better. I like the third act conflicts better. So if you want to start with a series, I think Just One Night, his book 1, or Just One Look, I don't know, whichever one's first, is the one that, like, start there and go through these. And the audios are very, very good. She does a good job with those. They are dual narration though. Okay, then I kind of caved last week. I didn't mean to do this. Like, for real, I didn't mean to do this. But it's been a long time since I talked about this. But sometimes at church, I start a new arc when I'm at church. I know this is weird. But I will start it because it's kind of a thing where I'm, like, forced to not do anything else but, like, read that while I'm listening to the sermon. because I don't get as distracted by everything else going on. Whereas when I'm at home, sometimes it's very hard to start a book. Like, I can usually zone in once I've started the book and we're good, but sometimes it's hard to start. And all that being said, I started Unloved by Peyton Corinne, and I was immediately sucked back in, which I was really glad for, because Unsteady, you guys know, is in my top reads of 2024. I loved that book all last year. When I reread it, I loved it even more. And that book reminded me about Rosalie and Freddie, aka Matt is his real name. Freddie is his like nickname. And when I reread Unsteady, it got me excited for this one. So it had only been, I think, 3 weeks since I reread Unsteady, and I was like, you know what? Let me just do it, because it does come out the first week of February, so it's not like I'm that early reading it. So I dived in, and I enjoyed this a lot, okay? I enjoyed this a lot. And because this one's still a ways away, I don't want to go too deep, but I feel like I can say some stuff that you already like know if you've read Unsteady. But this is another hockey player romance, and then there is Ro, who is actually Matt's tutor. So Matt has ADHD, dyslexia, and I'm not going to be able to say this, dyscalculia. I can't pronounce it, but I'm sorry. I do think it's kind of interesting that a condition like that is so difficult to pronounce but anyway, so he has both some difficulty like reading and some difficulty with numbers. And he is very kind of like ashamed about that, and it makes him feel very stupid, and he's barely holding on to college. But it's also interesting about him because he basically could be playing for the pros already. Like, he wouldn't need to like keep going with school. And the fact that he still is in school though means he has to keep his grades high enough to then be in the sport. So if he would just leave and play it, he wouldn't be in this place. But he's very determined to like graduate and be done. And previously he's had some really shitty tutors, and there's supposed to be these programs and help in place to help him, you know, get through these, and his tutors have been shit. And one of these tutors, who's an absolute fucker, is Ro's boyfriend, or on again, off again situationship at the beginning of the series, or at the beginning of the book. And again, we know about him from Unsteady. We know that Sadie doesn't think much of this piece of shit very much. And yeah, so when we start this series, we actually start with the first time Maddie and Ro have met each other, which is her freshman year. She meets him and kisses him at a party, and then he is very drunk though and doesn't remember it, and she ends up dating somebody else. And now it's literally, you know, 4 years later, she's a senior and she becomes his tutor. And yeah, and through this, they become really close friends, and he sees how she's being treated in her relationship. And there's just a lot, honestly, of angst in this. And if you're someone who watching a heroine be a pushover and be pushed over is difficult for you to read, this is tough. Like, there were lots of parts of this where I was just begging her to get out of this situation, because it's one of those where she isn't being full-on abused, but she definitely is being gaslit and being told she's stupid, and the things that she loves aren't as great as the things that her whatever loves. And he abuses, like, she always wants more affection and he doesn't give that easily, and he makes her feel like a slut because she enjoys sex with him. And like, so there are these things that, yes, when I list all of those things, you're like, oh wow, she's being mistreated in this relationship, which is true. But it's that thing too where he's really has gaslit her into, it's just a way of how it goes. But we bring Maddie into this, and where this like officially gets started, not the flashback, Reese and Sadie's relationship is happening at the same time. So that brings Ro and Freddie around each other. And so those scenes that we get peeks at when you're in Unsteady happen here. Which I don't always love when that happens, but in this case I kind of did, because, you know, like the scene in Unsteady where Freddie freaks out on Sadie for not showing up on time for Matt's, he is Matt, for Reese's birthday and things like that. Like, we get to see why Freddie is so pissy at Sadie, which, I mean, when you read Unsteady, you know why Freddie is mad at Sadie, because he sees one of the most lovable guys who he's watched go through hell be kind of jerked around by this girl, and just all these different things. So part of it too is like Freddie has a playboy image, you know, a rake, as we would say if we were in historicals, and it's you know, but it becomes very clear that he thinks that's what he has to offer is being good at sex, since he's not good at a lot of other things. And he's very self-aware of that too. So anyway, I've talked a lot about it, but their relationship ended up just feeling so wholesome. And what goes from, you know, her having actually like pined after him and being upset that he didn't like recognize her, turns to then like he's pining after her now that she's his tutor and he's seeing her all the time, and like what a amazing woman she is. And there's just lots of, you know, there's just lots of feelings that go with that, right? So yeah, it's tough to see, man. It's tough to see them be like that. But in the way that Unsteady did, there was so many moments and little things and actions that they both do to show how much they care. And though, yes, it does take quite a while to get to a relationship with them, like this took a long time to get there. I'm not even kidding. It did. But once we got going with it, man, it really got, like, there was some good stuff in here for sure. Because again, partly too with her, she's been told all of the things she desires and wants are like dirty. And Freddie is like, girl, we can do it all. Let's go. So anyway, I feel like I've been vague enough about that, but I gave this 5 stars. Let's just get to the point. I didn't quite put it at an Unsteady level, and partially that's because Reese, you know, like if you watch my wrap up of the year, Reese is, out of last year, he's my #1 book boyfriend that I read last year. He absolutely was. He was perfection to me. And Freddie / Matt is still like, oh, there's so many great things about him too. But I can only hold Peyton Corinne against herself. And so when I put them together, like, they're both 5-star books, but Unsteady was a 6-star. So this is a 5-star read for me. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale. And again, there is some serious gaslighting and emotional abuse in this one. So be prepared for that, because honestly, it frustrated me so bad. But like, we all have that friend who's went through it, and you can't get them out of it till they're ready to get out of it, you know? As people's friends, there have been, this is a side note, particularly one girl in my life who, she actually used to live in the 2 apartments above me, and we went to the same church about like 6 or 7 years ago, and she was in a relationship with a guy that was so emotionally abusive, and there was multiple times me and her roommate tried to get her to leave him, and she would just end up right back there. Now they're no longer like together now, like, thankfully. And you know, I also learned some things later on that she wasn't maybe as innocent as she seemed. I know that's a side note, but from other people, not from her lips, there definitely were, they were toxic to each other. Let's just say that. They were toxic to each other. And she was maybe lying to me about maybe not what he was doing with her, but what she was doing to him, you know? We all know those people too. But anyway, my point being, when you as the friend so fully believe your friend and you want to help them somehow, you will do anything, but you can't leave the person for them, right? And that's tough, especially when their self-worth isn't high enough, right? So, okay. So then we got into the historical romance readathon. So I have 4 of those to talk about so far. And I mean, next week I'll have a couple more because I'm almost done with 2 more that should be next week. But I finally read A Contracted Spouse for the Prizefighter. This is book 3 in the Victorian Prizefighter series, and it wraps up that trilogy. This book was my favorite in the series. I gave it 4.5 stars, and let's talk about why. So this is about Theodora, and she had, like, I'm just going to read the back to you. Let's just do that. Let me just read the back and then I'll explain what it is. Theodora knows in her heart that she has star quality, but sadly, no one in her theatrical family feels the same way. When her sister leaves to get married, Theo is promptly axed from the bill and expected to take a back seat in the family business. So her and her sister actually had an act in their family theater, but her sister was always a star. And so when her sister leaves to get married, Theodora gets kicked out of it, even though she owns a part of the business as well. Clem Dabney, aspiring theater owner and ex-prize fighter, has built up his supper and song business as far as he can take it. So he has almost like a vaudeville type comedy, crude stuff that happens while people have dinner. There's like a pub and stuff to eat while you do it. So almost like, you know, like a comedy hall or something like that. But he wants to own a proper theater. In order to expand, he now needs a theater. When Theodora appears before him with her outrageous proposition, he sees a chance and devil take the consequences. Their marriage is purely a business arrangement, so Theo is not worried about Clem's reputation and Clem is not concerned about Theo's distinct lack of feminine charm. Now that's all settled and out of the way, both agree things should be straightforward enough. Why then is Clem acting the jealous husband when Theo finds herself among a throng of new admirers? So, happens here is, as I said, she gets kicked out. So she owns a fourth of this business because her siblings each own a quarter, and then they have a friend who is an investor too, and so they each own parts of it. But because she's a woman, her brother's the one who gets to like be in charge of her part of it, even though she owns some of it, right? And so when her sister leaves, her brother's like, I don't want you acting in this anymore. And the role that she would play is she would actually play like a man in the play that her sister was in. And she would play like different roles as a man, because what Theo's dream is to have an act where she is a male impersonator. That's a comedy act, right? So it would be, I'll show you the little picture. So eventually what she starts is this Piccadilly Percy, which is accompanied by Miss Lillian Logden. And so this is actually Theo. And then this is Lillian, who is her friend. And she's an older woman too, who is basically not a starlet anymore. She's, I think, in her early 50s. And they do this act, like a body comedy act, where Theodora pretends to be Percy and is kind of like the straight man who's pretending to be a bumbling like idiot, and then Lillian is the like charming seductress who's trying to, like, it sounds hilarious. I say like I've seen it or anything, but it feels like I have. So anyway, this is the thing that Theodora wants to put on, okay? And she tries to convince her brother to let her do it, but he's like, it's not respectable, we can't do it, it's not going to happen. So she goes to Clem and makes this proposition because she knows he's interested in the business, though there is some things that he hasn't quite told her about, which I won't say. But she basically literally proposes to him, like, marry me. You will then have a percentage of my family business because, like, we'll be married. You'll be in control of that. In exchange, I want you to let me do my comedy show that I'm putting together at your place, right? So because she's like, it will fit your place better. And Clem, who, again, does want to get into this theater thing and is pretty sure that she's going to look like an absolute idiot doing this, he's like, well, once she flops, she'll be so embarrassed. I'll be the kind husband, give her a job working in the back or something like that. Like, he thinks he's going to be able to just pat her on the head and send her away. And what becomes really interesting about the story, like I said, you know, it says, like, what's he going to do when she has these admirers? Well, really what happens is that once they're married and, like, she's working on this act and everything and putting it together, and it's funny because she is very awkward in real life. She's not very feminine, and she spends a lot of her time observing men, which is funny because in the beginning he's like, is she attracted to all these people? But no, she's like a mimic almost. So she watches men and then, like, she'll follow them behind and like try to walk like them. And I just loved it, the way that the author explains what she's doing is so cool. But anyway, as things go on, and again, like, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but I've really only explained part of it. You'll see what I mean. He starts to really fall for her. They really like each other. They both like the physical parts of their relationship, though they've agreed they don't want to have children yet. So there is actually like contraception used in here too, which I love seeing historical versions of contraception, you know, for however, reliable or not they might have been. I love seeing those devices used because I'm just a nerd for the history. But he really does start to fall for her. And so instead of like, you know, let her flop at this and then I'll push her to the side, he gets more and more anxious that she's going to flop and just be devastated. And the more he cares about her, the more he actually is like, oh no, this is going to be awful. I don't want her to be embarrassed. But as it says in the back here, she's going to find herself some new admirers. So needless to say, things don't quite go with that performance the way he thinks that they're going to go. And I just loved this. Okay, I really, really did. This was so fun. I laughed. I was swooning too. This is another one of those that I shared a thing on my Instagram where when the hero is so like sure that he's put the heroine in a certain box in his mind where like this is where she fits, and she just completely surprises him and he's just put completely on his ass. And it's also one of those where like times when they'll have sex, he just loses his mind in attraction for her and is almost just like embarrassed with himself, but it's so cute. Like, it's adorable. I love it so much. So anyway, I thought this was so great. I gave it 4.5. The reason for the half-star take-back was, honestly, this is very long. The audiobook is super long. The book is almost 500 pages. There was room to cut stuff from this, and there was times where I was kind of like speeding up the audiobook and skipping some things because we just took a long time to get there. But part of that too is that I'm during the readathon and I was like, I want to finish this freaking book. I've been reading it for 3 days, like get to the end of it. But this was so good. And then my final thing to say about this is that this is book 3 in a series, but unlike some books I was talking about earlier today, you can definitely read this as a standalone. And I've said that about all the books in the series because the only way these guys are connected is that they all knew each other when they were prize fighters, okay? Because each one is a Victorian prize fighter. And so in each one, there's kind of a cameo from someone. This one being the last in the trilogy, like you do see everyone previously because eventually they show up at the, what's it called? The theater to like see a performance, but you can read them out of order. Like book 2, I really love too. The Substitute Bride for the Prize Fighter. I love that one. So anyway, really enjoyed. 2.5 on the spice scale. Very good. There was even a little bit of praise kink in here for like the hero too, which was great. So loved that. Okay, next up, moving along, there is The Silent Duke by Jess Michaels, and this is easy because I'm not going to talk about this one today. This is one of the Rake Appreciation Society books, so this was also a lot of prompts in the readathon it turned out to be, but just to tell you what it is, this is about Ewan Hofstede, the Duke of Dunborough, who was abused by his wicked father and wretched brothers because he is mute. And he was born that way. He's never spoken before. And then recently widowed is Charlotte, who is the Countess of Portsmouth. Her husband died, and she's actually always been interested in Ewan. And so much so when they were children, they actually came up with basically their own sign language that only the two of them know. And she actually really loves him. She wanted to be with him before she ever married, but he feels like he's damaged and he doesn't want any children he has to have the same disability as him. So we're dealing with those kind of things. So Crystal and I just decided on our live show date. I haven't put a graphic together yet, but it is going to be the Wednesday before Valentine's Day. So February 12th, we'll be talking about The Silent Duke as well as It Had to Be a Duke by Vivian Lorette. So you'll find out my rating about it then. Then I listened to A Class Forsaken by Susie Murphy. This was narrated by Gary Furlong, and this one was book 3 in the Class Apart series, or what's it called? The Class A Matter of Class, the series or whatever. And this is the Irish series. There's Bridget and Cormac. And this is an ongoing series. So you have to start with book 1. And we actually read book 1 for the last Rake Appreciation Society seasonal meeting. And Crystal did not care for that one. And I was intrigued by it. So none of these have had like the HEA yet because it's a continuing story. It does read a lot like a Downton Abbey. Think of maybe like Sybil and Branson if they did have to run away together. Even works too because it's Irish. And so there's definitely comparisons that way. But books 1 and 2, very like depressing. Book 3, there's still a lot of depressing stuff in this one. I'm not gonna lie. In this one, they're trying to find Cormac's family, who was chased off of the estate after Bridget was forced to marry her fiance and blah blah. Her mother promised that like Cormac would be fine if she left, and then promptly they fired him and chased him off. And then they did the same with his entire family, who was his mother and 3 sisters and nephew. They were all chased off the property. And so it's 7-8 years later, and Cormac is trying to find out what happened to them. So I gave this one a 3.5, but I think I did round down to 3 because I'm not going to be continuing this series now. Where this one ended, I'm going to consider a happy for now because they're on the way to America. They're pregnant with another child, and there's a bit of respite right here. But I know there is at least 3 more. I believe another one's coming, and I can't go through the ups and downs anymore. Okay, so I don't like continuing series about the same couple where we're not sure how things are going to work out. And the author does say this is a sweeping historical romance, and I disagree, especially now having read 3 and we don't have a happily ever after yet. So you really got to stop calling it romance until we're done, and it is, because it's not right now. And each one is very painful. So you can call something that, but it's historical fiction with a good romance in it, but it is just a lot. And in this book, there's not a lot of work done on their romance. They're on the run all the time. You know, she's not divorced from her husband because he isn't going to grant her a divorce. And they have a, you know, illegitimate child together. Like, there is so much pain in this. It hurts so bad. But I can understand why some people would like it. Because, you know, I've read the Poldark series. I've read those. But I also wasn't under any illusion that those ones would have necessarily a happily ever after. And the author is continuing to pitch these as historical romance. And, like, it's historical fiction with a romance. So yeah, I ended this one at a 3.5, but I did round down to 3 on Goodreads, and it's a 1 on the Spice scale. And definitely there is death and grief going on in this one. And then the final book that I got through this week was A Scandalous Spring by Sophia Nye. This is a new to me author that I read for the readathon. This one is medieval. It's class difference. In the beginning of this story, this is Scottish Highlands medieval time, like 1190, I think it's set in. And our hero, Fintan, I don't no idea how to say his name, he is sent to actually collect Sibylla and bring her back to like his keep, or maybe he's sent to get here. They might be sent to get someone else, and I think she goes along with. I actually think that's what happens because she is upset kind of with her father, and so she's kind of running away by going with them. But they're going to like a friendly keep. It's not like she's running away with the enemy or anything. But on the way home, so it's kind of like road trip in the beginning, Sibylla and Finn like share one horse and they start falling for each other. And this is book, I think, 3 in a series. It's one that I got free during like the Stuff Your Kindle days, and often authors make a later book in the series free so that you will buy the other ones. I didn't. But based on the context of this, I think that Sibylla and Fintan had connections previously where she was a bit stuffy and like uptight to him, but she is a lady and like he is just like a, you know, a subject of his laird and everything. And he is also a single guardian. So his mother recently died, and so he has 5 younger siblings, ranging from like a little baby up to a younger brother who's just like a few years younger than him. And I think in the story he's like 23. I think Sibylla's like 18. And he sees a different side to her when they're traveling back. And once they make it back to the keep and she meets his siblings, she really is falling for him. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars though, because I didn't really feel the swoon in this. I didn't really feel the romance in this. And then they just decide to like get married very quickly in here. I mean, the book's only 220 pages. So I mean, everything happens kind of quickly. And the drama in it really has to do with like there's a war, like there's battles going on outside of them. So there's danger that happens, but it's because of that. And then they're just married and it's done. It also has basically closed door scenes too, which I'm not detracting from it for that, but I didn't really feel the romance then. Plus there wasn't that. So just kind of whatever. But I tried to try as many new to me authors during this as I could. And I've gotten through 2 new to me authors, and I am still reading another one, which isn't a new to me author, but I'm currently in the middle of a Lauren Smith and what's the other one I'm reading right now? I can't remember her name, but I'm reading another new to me author and another author that I've read before. So those are what I've read last week, not so far this week. That's what I read last week. So this is our 3rd week wrap up of 2025. So yeah, let me know what you've been reading. Let me know if you've read any of these ones. Are you excited for any of the new releases that I mentioned? I will have links down below to all the books I talked about, whether you get an ebook, a physical copy, or an audiobook. It all does help the channel, and by that I mean me. Like I said, I do have some openings on my Patreon always. There's tier levels all the way from $3 up to $100. So definitely check those out if you want to support me somehow there. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you later, friends. Bye.